Hello, one and all. Thank you for joining us today for a very exciting show on Human Up TV. I'm here with my father, Ashok Gangadine, and my name is Nathan Gangadine. Um, Today's show is centered around the Constitution in 1776 and the founding of the sacred experiment of America, the United States of America. And we're calling it It's Time for the American Revolution, which is a bold thing to say by all accounts. We thought the revolution already happened. That was way back in the 18th century that happened, right? Well, let's see that in a new light for today's experiment, which is to consider that a profound breakthrough on the planet, not just for America, but for the planet. That was the initiation of something profound that it's time for us to fulfill, and it's time to us to rise into it and become now. A little bit about me and my context, and you know, we have a wealth of videos already, so many offerings at unveiling.com and humanup.tv that look at this in so many different ways, but we're focusing now you know, on the 1776 Declaration of Independence and what that call really is and really means. Now, I have to say, I've only gotten hip to this in recent years. I have to be honest. I grew up very much like a lot of the people I know, sort of taking the freedoms and liberties for granted. You know, someone else is taking care of it. The government's taking care of it. Mom and dad are taking care of it. You know, the mentality of just coming into a quote unquote free country and sort of taking that for granted, just because what you've always known. But then, of course, even in a quote unquote free country, noticing at a deep level, something's wrong, something's not right. What's with all this? What's with all this judgment? What's with all this conflict? What's with racism? What's with sexism? What's with, you know, it's starting to become more and more aware and awake about that over the years. And then really just over the last decade, I started to pay attention more. I started to really, you know, of course I'd go and vote, but I almost did it as that's the thing you do, and didn't really think about what does it mean to vote? What does it really mean to be a citizen here of a free country and of a democracy? And it's around that time that Dad, you started to bring through the profound meditations. You started to read and quote the Constitution to me. And at first, I'll be honest, I didn't really get it to the profound level that I'm starting to, which is really the impetus behind this right now, is seeing the state of America and the world, because we're all in this together. But America being really the country that people think is the leading democracy, an example of life, liberty, and happiness, supposedly, the land of the free, home of the brave, these calls. And to see what's going on in our culture right now, even if you're not paying close attention to actual events taking place, it's so obvious and you can just feel it. In fact, I have a son, and I know that even though he's not tuning into it full on, I know that he feels the anxiety and the strain and the stress, and I'm learning through him. So do the other kids. You know, our kids are coming into this really intense and scary time, really, with just where the way things are building and the divisiveness and the polarization and all of this. So the point being, there couldn't be a better time than right now to bring through to really go into what is the true medicine and science and call of 1776. And really, Dad, I got to say, hats off to you, because it's taken me a while to really get up to speed with the profoundness of what you seem to be unlocking with this. Ever since you went and sat at City Hall, that story you've told me, sitting at City Hall on the very benches where our founding fathers sat, and tuning into that. And really, I remember when you started to really delve into this more deeply, and I've watched it unfold and evolve over the last decade. And it's become so profound and so powerful it's clear people need to know this. People need to hear it. They need to feel it. Most of all, they need to get that this isn't just up to government or our elected officials, or it's every single one of us needs to tune into this founding code, which is more than an American thing. It's a human thing. And so we want to bring that to you guys today. Dad, I hand the baton to you. I really see you as the leader here today because of your background and your knowledge and the space that you hold. So I want to play the role of the student, which I am, still catching up, and I want to help the people in general catch up to this amazing revelation that's going on here.
Thanks, Nathan. It's a pleasure to really be in this deep dialogue with you, and you spoke very well to open up and set the energy for the magnitude of what this sharing is in this presentation and meditation with our visitors who will be tuning in. And just the very suggestion that it's time for the American Revolution, the real revolution. We've done preliminaries, and as you beautifully said, what happened back in 1776 period, in that phase of the independence and revolutionary wars, magnificent change in historical conditions in a holy experiment of the 13 colonies leading up to where we are now, almost 250 years later. But to dare to suggest that maybe we have not yet fully gotten the depth of the code that's behind the 1776 visionaries. It was not a matter of who they were, as such, but what they were tapping, in the wealth of wisdom that's been building up all through the European experiment, right? In so many branches coming and converging in Philadelphia. And we wanted to really look at that because I think we've been missing the deeper code in 1776 that has not yet been realized. That will change everything that is going on in our culture now. Nathan, you're right to say that when you look around the culture now and you look at our kids and what the anxiety they're feeling and the people, there's a lot of anxiety building in the American polis. And we're looking at the American lab today as a sample of what's going on around the planet, right? We're clear about that. And the 1776 is way beyond just the colonies. It was deeper than the colonies. It was deeper even than the founding of America. It was a call for all the people to know, we'll read it in a moment, that the greatest thing here in the human condition is that we're noble, independent, sacred beings who have divinely given rights from the source of being itself. You don't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be about religion, or it doesn't even have to be about spirituality. It has to be with rationality. We are rational beings in our deepest depth, and that means that we're persons, and persons can never be objectified and used. And the founding visionaries were reaching that peak moment of the European Enlightenment, that version of it, where we're calling us to see that we have birthright from the source, from the laws of nature, from reason, from the logos. They're tapping that logos code, and we still have not seen that code clearly. And that's what we want to do in this session. So wherever we go from now into 2019, there's an election coming up in 2020 on the American scene. What is the heart of the election? We want to suggest when we really understand the depth of the call of the 1776 code, that we have not yet accomplished the fulfillment of the American Revolution, which is to create self-governance and a political space in which we can all flourish, all of us, as logos sapiens, humans, rational beings in rational light, for all people in all walks and talks of life. No human being is outside, whatever your belief system, whatever your ideology. The call of 1776 is deeper than any ideology or particular story or religion or spirituality, and yet it's tapping the source code. That's what we're going to bring out today, from which all of these perspectives, all humans live in that source code. If you're an atheist, you're under it. If you're a nihilist, if you're a skeptic, you're still called. If you're a scientist, you're still under it. It's not a matter of any particular religion. All religions are being called. All perspectives, all worldviews, all walks and talks, all humans are under the 1776. The code it was really tapping was magnificent when we see it in a global light. And that's what we'd like to help place 1776 in a global light. So Nathan, maybe a good way to begin is to just share in a preliminary way. Let's look at the language together and read it together. And then we'll go and I'll try to place and open up how I show the missing code of 1776. Can we do that?
Right up.
Would you read it, Nathan?
Gladly. So, of course, in Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
Just pause a moment. That's amazing. Before we go too much, this, the laws of nature, the nature's God entitled humans, and the decent respect for the opinions of mankind, the wisdom of mankind, of human. So it's a really beautiful scope of pointing to the planetary wisdom and speaking about nature's God, the source, and the separate and equal station. That means everyone has a right to their own autonomous freedom and independence. Right? That's amazing. Bring it back up again. Let's go deeper.
Okay, great. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Pause a moment. Just don't keep it up there, Nathan. We don't have to go out of it. This is an amazing principle of global scope and power, tapping the deep logos of all of our worldviews, self-evident truth. That's amazing. Self-evident truth means you're in the light of logos, in the deep space in which to see it. It's self-evident. That's powerful. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All humans are created equal, and that we are endowed by this source, this logos, this deep source of reality, of being itself, with certain ontological being rights, the rights of our being. Among these, life. Think of that. Life, capital L, liberty, freedom, and the right to pursue our well-being or happiness. Keep going.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers, their just powers, from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Pause a moment. I mean, that's so much to take. Again, what is the lead vision of this founding document? It's that we are sacred human beings with an unalienable rights of freedom in our very being. Nothing, the screen just went out a bit. Yes, here we are back again. And that, notice, it's nothing about the British monarchy or anything about that. The first opening line says it's our right to separate from any political bands that bring people together. The political bands, the codes, the conventions, the contracts that we have as humans, spoken or unspoken, that brings us together to form a culture and a society and a political space. We need to separate from those political forms if it violates our humanity. And so the lead organizing principle of the Call of 76 is an amazing principle, that we have powerful, deep, inalienable rights given by the source of our being, in the Logos code. If we don't have that code, we're blowing it. And then we form governments to secure these. That's the point. Governments are in service of protecting the human liberty and life and happiness and our dignity as independent, separate beings. And that whatever form of government, whenever it becomes destructive to this, we've got to deal with it. Call it out. We, the people, to call it out and find new foundations, laying its foundations on principles and organizing its powers. Notice that's very powerful language. There's a science going on here, a deep rational science, tapping the logos for all humans across the planet. But now we're looking at the founding of this holy experiment in Philadelphia. Keep going now. Wrap it up.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
Pause a moment. That's huge. In other words, we humans, it's a very conservative thing. You don't mess and lightly tamper with the form of government that you have. So we're willing to suffer all kinds of evils and negativity and degradation and breakdown that violates our human rights, our inalienable rights. And it's a very ultimate moment when we're pressed with experience has shown that mankind are disposed to suffer, but than to right themselves in the way that to forms which they are accustomed. Keep going, wrap it up.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
New guards for future security of our rights of humanity. And when we are suffering the taking over and colonizing of our human rights, any form of government, and the despotism, that means that the tyranny of the cultural matrix that we're living in, if that violates our humanity, it is our right to renovate it and find ways, creative ways, in the logos, in the light of reason, as rational sapiens, to really have self-governance that will treasure and value and support our highest happiness. This is an amazing document. There's nothing here yet about the monarchy or about breaking away from Britain. It's separating from any political forms or forms of government and self-government that violates our sacred humanity. That's what I think we should hold. And what I'd like to do now, that we can really, we'll come back to this at the end of this conversation, this one-hour conversation. But what I'd like to do is to work with you to try and help bring out the code. We're saying the missing code, the source code. Mm-hmm. There are two versions of 1776. The way we may have been reading it in a certain cultural lens of the mind, of a stage of rational development, that all of our great wisdom teachers across the planet have been saying we've got to human up. We've got to upgrade our code. We're not yet tapping the code of our dignity and humanity and right to life, liberty, and freedom, right? And that's what I'd like to show. And then look, again, come back at the end of this conversation after you have a quick journey into the wisdom, emerging wisdom over, let's say, 2,500 years across the planet. So what would you like?
Well, I just want to reflect back how I see what you're saying when you say there's really two 1776. There's a way of looking at it as a historical document and a moment of the past. And that really robs it of its true pertinence, which is more pertinent now than ever. It's not, in other words, it's not a law written in stone that we have to refer to, that we got to follow the rules, right? We got to stay true to the Constitution, because if we don't, what are we, right? There's a kind of, a sort of inert and lifeless version of it it's more of a relic and an idol of what it actually is. And there's what we're trying to do is to bring really 1776 to 2019 and beyond, in the sense of this getting the hidden code, which is not that hidden, but you have to know how to read it, right? You need to, in a way, bring it into a higher light of reason in order to really see its pertinence and power for not just America, but for humanity. Am I right on that?
Exactly right.
Okay.
And so 1776, there are two versions. It's going on for everything in our cultural lives. What I'd like to do now is step back and just look across the planet and quickly, in a very brief time. And by the way, this opening conversation is a first of a series. So we're not going to cram everything into this, but we're going to open up such powerful themes that to really understand how to read the depth of the code, the logos code of 1776, right? It's going to call for a radical rethinking of everything that's now familiar, because the way we've been looking at it, because everything in our lives, to be a human is to interpret, to use a lens, to use a stage of word power and mind power and consciousness power and reason power to interpret. So if we look at the 1776 document, which what you just beautiful said, it's not a dead relic. It's a living document, because what we just read is for any time, for any government, And the presiding vision is humans are sacred, independent, free, with a right given by the source. I'm going to bring that out. The source of being itself. You don't have to say God. The logos itself, as rational beings, is the source of our innate rights to life, liberty, happiness. Right? So this document is beautiful because it's not linking itself with a dead document, but a continuing self-revision. Whatever form, at any time, in the course of events, that we are finding ourselves in a form of self-governance. It's not about the British and the monarchy. It's right now. If we're in a form of self-governance now that is violating our dignity and rights and freedom and the right to life, and we're missing it, it's our duty to look at it.
See that, yeah. That was such a huge aha in our recent conversations when I realized, oh my gosh, it's that governance. It's what we're dealing with right now. In a way, what America has come to has become the oppressor of what America is meant to be.
That's beautiful said. So in a way, when we say the unfinished American Revolution, or it's time for the American Revolution, it's suggesting something deeply radical that we've got to look at with highest priority. We're in trouble. Our culture is medically, ontologically in trouble. Ontologically means the science of being. We're in deep trouble. Our survival is at stake. And it's not yet visible because we're so embedded within that old ways of thinking that are colonized. We humans are colonized. We're not free. And we want to bring that out today. It's a big deal. We can't fix it. And we can't fix the matrix effects of the degradation of our culture and the loss of our freedom and life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We're not in a cultural space where that's going on. And it's so deep, the matrix that governs us now and colonizes us. We're still colonized.
Yeah, unpack that just for a moment. I don't want to sidetrack you, but I think that's such a profound point because we think of colonization as the product of another government, taking over lands and colonizing it, right? But how is that? And again, it's another one of those words that sounds pertinent to history and the past, but how is that pertinent now? Nobody talks colonies now so much. So.
Well, right, so to say it suggests that if we allege to be the leader of the free world and the land of the free, and yet our mental processing, the code that still dominates our thinking and our world making and our life, right, has got us bind and bound in a limited space that our great wisdom teachers, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna, Buddha, the science, the deepest research of humanity, all the wisdom of the planet, the yoga technology, they're all saying you got to upscript, you got to upgrade, right, to become free, to enter the land of the free, right? It's a mental land space and landscape of culture. If the culture space is using a code that binds our mind, and our mind is the ultimate technology of making our worlds, we're always interpreting. If our minds are bound, then we're colonized.
That's so huge.
You follow?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
And that's not just an abstract idea. We're literally experiencing in that and living that colonization or that restriction of our beings. And so we may think that we're moving freely, but we may actually not be.
That's right. That's right.
Which is huge because if we're the land of the free, supposedly, but we're not actually, but we don't know it.
It's not a physical land. It's a cultural land.
Right.
It's a community land. It's a space of reason. It's a space of life that we humans interpret our worlds. We make our worlds, and there's a code and codes that we use to have a culture, a religion, a science, a perspective, a political, ecumenical space, a democracy. We are using a code. Are we aware of the code? Are we aware of how our great teachers were saying, if you're misusing and you're not getting the logos code, the deep code, the source code of the laws of nature and God's nature, and you don't have to say of rationality, then you are bound by a downgraded code where we're colonized because we're slaves to that code, because our whole life is being created by that code.
Wow.
That's being colonized.
Right.
That's what we want to call out.
Thank you. Yeah.
And when you feel it's appropriate, Nath, I'd like to just take a moment. You've got the flip chart behind us, and you'll see this space that it took decades for me to come as a philosopher and first scientist, which is my field of ontology or the science of being, and looking at the wisdom from Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, all the way through the centuries, following the European trail to Locke, Berkeley, Hume, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, Kant, Hegel, and into the contemporary 20th century of Heidegger and other great thinkers, it's all the same. We've got to go from an unfinished space where we're trapped to the space of freedom in the source word, the logos. Or you follow from Abraham, Moses, Jesus, all the way through to contemporary Christianity. It's trying to get into the light of logos. And the Quakers, for example, I'm teaching at the Quaker College of Haverford, right? Seeing it's that of God in every person, that of source in every person. Again, which was echoed in the 1776. The Quakers played a role in that, among many other visions of the Enlightenment. And if you follow from Buddha all the way through the centuries, you begin to see this pattern across the planet. Or Muhammad, and the call of Muhammad, all the way in the unfolding of Islam. Surrender to Allah in the Muslim position. And Allah is the infinite. And so there are many names for the infinite across the planet, but they're all calling us to mature, to come out of a cutoff where we're desourced. If we're cut off from the source, I'll gesture to the top of this visual, which I'm suggesting is centuries. It's coding like 2,500 years of global evolution in the space. Just to see the space and the infinite sign and the logos, the unum, the infinite unum. This is huge in terms of...
Unum's important with, because a lot of people aren't aware of e pluribus unum, or they might have heard it, but they don't know what it means. So just quick on that.
Right, yes, I'll be building up to that now.
Okay.
Thank you. But you're doing beautifully because you are the power of attorney for the people right now in this, so that you're constantly remind me to help clarify. But the logos is the infinite, and the infinite is infinitely one. This is huge. That's a consensus across the opinions of mankind, the wisdom. On the ground floor of reality. This is a hologram for the ground floor of reality, the source. It's the infinite space, and the double parentheses space is marking the infinite space. And whatever name we use for the infinite, the source of reality, it doesn't have to be religious, it doesn't have to be God, right? I'm using the word logos, just for example, from the Greek, which means the light of reason. It's infinite. And once you see the science unfolding, and this is what we'll develop in our 1776 series, a number of conversations to develop. This is highly compressed what we're doing right now. But the infinite is infinitely one. And that is unum, infinite unity. And infinite unity is filled with infinite plurality. So it's unum pluribus. So yes, one of the mantras or mottos of the call to 1776 of we the people, it's we, unum, with diversity, in this deep space, not in the space that we'll see in a moment. What I'll do is I'll begin to show that we are living in a subcultural space here. I'll try to make that clear very quickly. What's going on here? This is where we are so far in our human evolution. And the great teachers are saying, this is a disaster. We've got to cross into the deeper space where the unum pluribus, the logos, the I and the other, and all of our worlds are coming out of the deep common space. And 1776 is speaking here, not here. And so unum is infinite unum. When people say, oh, we're all one, look at the diversity of many different worldviews and cultures and perspectives and walks and talks of life. We're all one here. One here is not one here. Unum here is not unum. Unum is taken from the Latin to mean infinite connectivity, infinite unifying. So the state of the union, you could have the state of the union here, state of unity, which is divided, or the state of unum.
Wow, yeah.
One nation, unum, under logos. Source, here's the source. We're endowed by the source with human rights, and we become human when we upscript from this stage of human development to crossing into the American space, the land of the free, right? Pluribus unum. Vast diversity, every individual is unique, respected, noble, dignified, right to life, liberty, freedom, free thought, free speech, free being, happiness here, not here. So the America, what we'll see in this quick flash into 2,500 years of evolution, is to move America from here, which is colonized by thought forms in the matrix that we haven't really seen clearly. And that's new. We're bringing something new, but very old and classic, but by our great teachers. May I just go to a quick flash into this?
Yes, please do. I'm loving it.
Okay, so really what I'd like to show is that however we've evolved as humans, I'm just going to give a quick visual, that this space is a space of language, thought, consciousness, if for us humans. And when I say I, which is also a we, because I'm in a culture and we have a lens that we're using, and that's what we see, right? And that is the screen of our consciousness, our experience, our world, our meaning, our truth. And we use language here. So language is being used here. And philosophers have shown that what are we doing when we're thinking? I don't want to go into this now. We'll develop this later. But when we're thinking, we're joining pieces of ideas and words together, like Socrates is wise, snow is white, or America is a democracy, or Jesus is my Lord, God is love, whatever it is or isn't, the plus or isn't, we join and we get meaning, and then we have truth. Because if it has meaning and it pictures a world, then we get the facts. And that's the kind of picture we live in. It took centuries, millennia of evolution to come to a point where we can tap the word, the language, at this level and get information. This is the information box. And this is where we process ourselves. Because when I think, who am I? When I try to understand what are my attributes or qualities that make me who I am. I'm a male, I'm an American, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, all of these. Everyone is doing that in this space. And we don't, and this is a thinker who's experiencing, and we look and here's it, what's appearing to us in our screen. And what the great breakthrough of our wisdom across the planet is, whatever we see here, we're interpreting with the lens that we have. I'm using that marker to say every human has a lens which she's interpreting, is we built into our culture and our codes, and what appears to us is also being shaped by the lens that we have, the worldview, the perspective, across the planet. This is equal opportunity. And we proceeded with this level of language and information, which is a great breakthrough. It's fantastic to have information. Google space is going on for centuries to give information. But whatever we have, I can give it and speak about it. I can speak about it and describe what's going on, and that's where we live. And our great teachers saw that if we get stuck here as the ultimate and don't realize that there's a deeper space that we need to cross, this is all important. Because if we put 1776 here, if we put the Gospels here, if we put God here, if we put Moses here, whatever we put science here, we put everything we put in Google space, and think that we've got the ultimate information and wisdom, we're missing it because we don't see that there is something deep. When I draw this line here, this is what we're trying to bring up. This is a matrix, a technology of living in this space. That's important now, right? So this line has not been seen clearly. It's like we have an implant, a way of thinking, a powerful way of tapping language and reality and world and self and experience, and that's here. And when we look at the structure, what's going on? Well, the thinker has a thought space, a mind space, consciousness, feelings, emotions, information, and we talk about, and that's our world and our culture. And we can have all kinds of different perspectives and religions, and we can make all kinds of shifts here from one worldview to another. We could do that in science, we could do that in religion, we could do that in politics, we could do that in our personal lives. We could switch our stories, we could change our lens. For example, if I have a Newton lens, I'll get a Newton physics. If I have an Einstein lens, I'll have an Einstein physics. If I have a Christian lens, I'll see a Christian world. If I have a Muslim lens, I have a Muslim world. If I have a secular lens, I'll have a secular world. Mm-hmm. All kinds of many different worldviews are possible in this space. Mm-hmm. And that's where our cultures are being, but if we don't know how to understand that we're objectifying this, the thinker, our conscious space is separated from the content of our experience or what we're experiencing, and that's like an object to us. And we don't realize we're objectifying just by using this technology. And our great teachers are saying, if we have to put God first, if we have to put source first, when we're in this, behind this red line, that's what we're going to say. America is impaled along with people across the planet and our different cultures and nations and political lives and religions within that technology, and we don't realize that the opinions of wisdom across the planet are saying we've got to find a way to upgrade from this to a deeper way of using language in this space. Mm-hmm. Double parentheses to mark it out. Mm-hmm. That's really what that. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, no, I'm reminded of the Pledge of Allegiance, which of course I said so many times through the years, through my school years, without just, it was just mechanical regurgitation of the thing we were learned, but I'm thinking about the verbiage of the one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That is about as badass as it gets.
That's right. No, you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to finish the thought, though, but I can't help but think how many people can't even begin to think it just with the one nation under God part. You know what I mean? How many people just won't? For maybe a lot of people, it's not an issue, but I know a lot of people, maybe even most people I know, right there, they're gone. And we can't really even hear how powerful that is and how necessary. It's not something you vote on, in other words. It's not something that you swipe left or right on. It's something we all have to answer to. And that's what's so profound about what I hear you saying. Everybody, it's equal opportunity. Like you said, everybody.
Human, whatever walk, you can be an atheist and say there is no God. You can say there is no meaning, or whatever position you're here, we have to face. One of the main points we're making in this opening session of the liberation of 1776, and to see it here in this light, which is a profound shift in our culture tools. This is the technology of using language, of consciousness, of experience. We make our experience. We have our worlds constructed in this technology. So this red line is indicating, calling out a matrix. So every word we use here, we should really write it, whatever it is. Whatever, let's call it X, but any word we use single bracket, it's not the same as that word crossing this important line. Let me just take a moment to go fast. I'm gonna.
Good. I won't interrupt.
Okay, this is a huge hologram because it's saying, wow, here's the bottom line. If American culture, for example, and this goes across the planet, if we're still living in this matrix, which is a technology of speech, of language, of thought, we could speak of God, we could say Jesus is my Lord, we can be a Christian here, we can be a Muslim here, we can be a Hindu here, a Buddhist, a scientist, an atheist here, all of that's going on. Equal opportunity. It's a neutral technology that can fund vastly diverse worldviews across the planet. They're all competing for this space. And this is where truth and meaning presides. So if you can show that your worldview is the only truth above all the other possible worldviews, that's huge. But however, the great teachers across the planet, and I'd like to just not be interrupted for this for a moment, are seeing that this stage of rationality, of logic, of language, is an adolescent phase that we must grow. Like a caterpillar has to become a butterfly, an ego pillar has to become a Buddha fly. Just to playfully say, we have to make the upgrade, and that's where 1776 was calling us. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that we humans are endowed, all of us, by the source, with unaided by the infinite source, the infinite code. There's a code here which is deeper than this code. That's the main point. So everything in this space is coded, but it cuts us off. That line is hugely important in terms of the deep wisdom of the planet, which is what? To see what is first must be honored as first. So when, in the biblical Judaic tradition, Yahweh, put Yahweh here, put Yahweh here, put Om here, put Brahman here, put Allah here, put being here. You don't have to use religious words. You don't have to be spiritual. It's basic being, the language of being here. Everything is within that space. That's what the blue line is suggesting. Whatever cultures we have, we couldn't have it without being in the infinite space. You can't step outside the infinite. And they're not more than one. There's only one. And that's why the infinite unity. So in the case of Socrates and the Greek tradition, the logos is a light of reason. And Socrates is saying, we humans are living in the cave. We don't have knowledge. We think we have knowledge, but we've got to go into the logos. And that's where we become woke scientists. This is how we become, and you have to leave the cave. It's difficult to leave the cave and cross. In the biblical sense, when Adam and Eve fell, they broke from the deep unified space of intimacy with God and went into the object of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge, which was really the technology, and that was sin. This is a sin zone, which means you're cut off from the source. That's a disaster. The consequence of sin is death, because when you cut this off from the source, this is the place of life, this is the place of unlife and death, because you're cut off and the technology is doing it. That's the main point. There's a matrix that was so deep that sin is a script, it is a technology. And we're using it to make our cultures. In the East, it's called samsara. Samsara is when we're cut off from Om, from Brahman, from Buddha nature. And when we've fallen here, so samsara is a cycle of perpetual suffering, and sin is being cut off. And the greatest movement is to try and overcome this alienated condition of being de-sourced to come into the source. That's the call of 1776. So America here in this space is what we're trying to show. American life and reading 1776 here and not realizing, wow, we better pay attention. Is there a matrix that's colonizing our minds, and we're living in this colonized zone and using a technology as great as it is with Google information, and we can make all kinds of changes. We could say, well, slaves must be freed. Women must have the right to vote. Gays are human. We need civil rights. We could do all of those changes here, but still be behind the space that is cutting us off from our humanity. That's the main point we want to bring out. So what Buddha is great, all of Buddha, I'm just trying to give a show the wealth of the human endowment of mankind. You go from Socrates, you go to Abraham and Moses. Moses goes to the burning bush and brings the laws down. Abraham has to sacrifice Isaac, which is sacrifice putting this first. When you live here, it becomes a kind of narcissistic, monocentric, cut off from the source, and not dialogos, dialogue. The version of us humans here is objectified in this space. We make ourselves in this space. Even though I'm out of the box, I make myself in the box, and that's how I get my ID and my identity and my individuality and my story and my worldview and the vast diversity here. But still, I'm trapped, I'm colonized, and I need to upgrade. And so the great teachers are saying, leave the cave and come into the logos. This is where the right to life, liberty, happiness, well-being, that's a great journey for all humans, whatever your walk or talk. Whether you're an atheist, you're against religion, you're against spirituality, you're a scientist, whatever it is, the call of the great field is this must be first. And when we put first, then we become aligned with being and we flow in the infinite connection. And me here, the I here, the person here is not the person here. The version of ourselves here, using this technology, is downgraded. And we need to upgrade ourselves, human up, to a place in which we're connected with the other. The other and I are always the ecology. We're infinitely connected in the unum power with each other, with all these worldviews. All of these are coming out of the deep source. That's a quick flash. So Buddha sought to be here. Buddha's enlightenment, in using that case, existence is suffering. We're trapped here. We're addicted to a pattern that we don't see. And we have to let it go and detach from this space to cross into the Buddha space, the Buddha land, the land of the free, the woke space, the enlightened space, rational space. That's Buddha. Yoga, the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is speaking the Om voice, the Om script here. The double bracket script is the Om script. And speaking to Arjuna, the warrior who breaks down. We're all going to break down here because this is dysfunctional. It cuts us off from the flow and connectivity into fragmentation, polarization. So what the great teachers began to see is that when you're living in this cultural space, as great as our information is, and as good as we are as good people with great intentions, sexism, racism, Holocaust, genocide, violence, war, objectifying our kids, objectifying each other, it comes in the very nature of the slashing power of that matrix.
I see that.
This is a quick flash. All the great scriptures and wisdom of mankind says we got to upgrade and upscript. So when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all humans are endowed by the source, by the logos, with unalienable rights of life, liberty, freedom, we're talking about the human here. In this case, the American here, which is dialogue, pluribus unum. And that's where we, the people, one nation, indivisible, under source, with liberty and justice for all. That's here, not here. It can't be here. So what we're saying, and we began, Nathan, is that look around the culture now, and we don't realize we're trapped in a colonized matrix of objectification, of conducting our political life, our personal life, our religious life, our scientific life, our educational life, our parenting, our love life. It's all going on here. And the great wisdom teachers and scriptures saying, get woke, let go and cross over. And that's the American Revolution. It's time for the American Revolution. And if you know how to read 1776 here, as we hold these truths to be self-evident, you don't get self-evidence here, you get it here.
That's
right?
a good point.
Right? So that's really So every human, right, if you're a voter and you're voting your personal interests and you're voting here, one person, one vote, you're missing the idea of how do I live and act in the political space here? What is that upgraded, humanized political space? When Martin Luther King said, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen the other side, I may not get there with you, we're going to get there one day. That's huge. All of those voices, the Gandhi voice, for example, right, the liberating of the human. The human here, as great as we are, and we're great, we're trapped and colonized in a matrix that's so deep that we can't see it, and that is the crisis of the American.
I think, yeah, that's what keeps on haunting me throughout this. I mean, I'm blown away just always seeing it deeper, but I just keep on thinking it's not about being a good person or a bad person. All that is a product of that code on the lower part there. But to realize even with the best intentions and genuinely wanting to get to the indivisible space, which is the space of peace and harmony and actual love, it's not a space of tolerating each other and holding it together, you know, in an inherently divisible space, which is waiting to disintegrate and break down. But so if we're trying to get to that upper space with the technology of the lower space,
you can't do it.
Scary. That's huge.
This is huge. Now we cannot. 250 years. We can make changes, but if we're trapped in this matrix, we're really stalled at the wall.
And there's better and worse down there. There is better.
Right, there is better and worse, because we can keep changing our story, changing our lens. You know, just freeing the slaves. Women can vote, equal rights for women, you know, gays are human. We could do that within here, we could do it, but if we're still living in the space, there is endemic, deep racism, logos-phobia, fear of logos, mythology. The logos is the woke space. This is where we get woke and mature as human beings. And the great teachers and scriptures and scientific first philosophies, it's called, first philosophy is this. This is a picture of first philosophy. We've got to go from a derivative form of degraded being to getting woke and becoming a woke sapiens, logos sapiens, turned on, upgraded, and that's human up. And this is where the political space, the mature political space, is non-violent. This is inherently violent. And what you're bringing out and noticing, Nathan, which is in all the attempts behind this wall to solve our problems that we know in our culture, and all of the different breakdowns and polarizations and objectifications and dehumanizations, we can try to solve it here, but as long as we're trapped in this matrix and don't see it and call it out, we will not medically solve the problem. We've got to cross over. So to vote now is the really election now coming up. It's not to just cast my vote and find someone to go into the White House who will really solve our problems and Congress with the gridlock and all of the breakdown. It can't happen here.
Yeah.
We have to really upgrade as a people. And listen to 1776. I love, before we end the session, to read it again, here and not here. Because when I read it here as information, I get one. If I read the Gospels here as information, Jesus is my Lord, Jesus died for me, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. When Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, you can't read it here. You've got to see the double bracket Jesus, who is the Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life, the Logos in the flesh, the Logos living. Because when you cross into living word, the living word, it's not the same as language here. And diversity here is just scattered and broken because there's no unum. So it's just pluribus without the unum. Even if you say all, we're all one, single bracket unity is not as deep as double bracket unity. And diversity here is healthy diversity because it's connected. The unum pluribus is connected.
And I think that's what people fear of oneness, is they think that oneness means that differences have to go away, because how else can you be one? I think that's a very important point to get. Nobody has to lose their
On the contrary, when you're in this single bracket space, you're downgraded and locked in and colonized. When you say, I am here, that's when you're woke and free and individual. You're individual. It means non-divided. Individual is divided, individual, sacred individual in the sacred space. This is sacred political space, the space of woke reason. We've got to get woke. So if we're going to say we're going to make America great, we've got to overcome this version of America. The single bracket version of America, which is where we are, no question, because we're still in this matrix and we haven't faced and done our homework.
Well,
rational work.
we're about 10 minutes out to wrap up. Do you want to read it again now in the higher space? And
I hope this is a lot. I mean, just to anyone joining our conversation, we're going to be following up. By the way, Nathan and I have done so many different publications on unveiling.com and the Human Up TV that we're launching, that already we've done versions of this. I have 28 guided meditations from Life Here to Life Here, for example, of 28 meditations up on YouTube already. So there's a vast presentation of this. But for this occasion, we wanted to really talk about the time for the American Revolution, which is to move from this space, this political space, all of us. If we're being a human here and we don't realize there's a deeper woke version, the election now is our joint election to be co-founders of the woke America, and open up the nonviolent political space, which is ethics. This is ethics because I and thou, the other, are interwoven, unbroken. The I is not separate. Here the I is separate, and the we can be separate in a tribal cultic type of form of a subculture. But in the woke culture, we're all interflow in the infinite unum connectivity. And when I see myself in the other and in the ecology, then that woke human being is a dignified, noble life, liberty, happiness here.
Right? And we haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't gotten there yet because we haven't even seen this. This is like a breakthrough into source science. Source science, the science of the infinite source of being, which is being tapped in the 1776 language. Yes, now, let's look at it again with this. Please listen to 1776 here in the woke language, not in the Google space, but in the call of being in the Logos. One nation, under source, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd love to hear it with your voice this time, if that's okay. Can you read it?
Okay, I'll read it then. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Wow. So it's like it's a whole new power in the context that you brought in.
That's the whole point. I mean, I'm inviting all people around the planet, but really in the American laboratory of the holy experiment of democracy. That democracy is where we're in dialogue, deep dialogue, and respect and honor, where every person is not objectified and objectifying one another, and everything in our ecology under the dominance and colonized by a stage of development of informationism and objectifying, and which fragments and breaks and polarizes. We're going to go into this, Nathan, in our subsequent follow-up to the call of 1776 and to show why in this space, this matrix where we're colonized, we're not free people. This is the land of the free. Imagine America here. So to become American, we got to get woke. After seeing this, if we're not getting woke, which is to cross and dilate our minds and open up our rational powers and enter into the logos of connectivity and coherence and deep meaning and sense, and this is a place of liberation. This is a land of the free, the code of the free. But the code that we've been using has been kept us in a colonized cultural and political space, all humans. Whatever your walk or talk of life. You could be an atheist, you're still under the logos. You could be a scientist and say, I'm not religious. That's okay. You can say there is no God. That's okay. That's not the point. You could say that God is Yahweh, or God is Allah, or God is Brahman, or God is Om, or God is Tao, or whatever name you use for the infinite. You could speak it here, but you're not getting the right language. You're not getting the right code, the code of the infinite, the code of woke. So to be unwoke is un-American.
Wow.
To be unwoke is un-American, understood when we see the woke version of 1776. And each human being in the American laboratory of the Holy Experiment is a multicultural society, allegedly, right? A secular culture where we separate church and state, all of those, and the separation of powers and checks and balances. When we understand them in a deep dialogue, that's when we overcome the gridlock and the breakdown that's so obvious on the current American scene.
Yeah.
The American scene, as we've developed the experiment thus far, has not yet gotten woke. We've not matured to the land of the free. We're the colonized people. And this is very serious, because if we consider ourselves and dub ourselves America here as leaders of the free world and the first world, and we keep saying that over and over, are we free? All of our great teachers saying this is freedom. Jesus speaking, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? Unless you die, you can't be born again. So if you're going to be a Christian, you can be a Christian here in this space, and I follow the Gospels. I got the Google information. I believe in my Lord. I believe in Moses. I believe in Allah. I believe in Quran. I believe in the yoga. I believe in the science, whatever it is. If you're here, you are cut off from a deeper way to be a scientist, a deeper way to be a lover, a deeper way to raise our children in a non-violent space where we slash each other here and break into pieces. And we'll see why in the sequel to this conversation, why America is enslaved within this space. And to become free, we've got to get woke. So there are two versions of America. America here, single bracket, in this space, or America liberated, the land of the free, rational space. This is when we're awakened, rational beings, life, liberty, freedom. Freedom is not here. Life is not here. Liberty is not here. It's here. And in our voting now, every person has to become a naturalized American. You got to get woke. That should be our next election. Yeah. If you're going to vote here, you're voting for this. Wow. Whoever you put in the White House, or whoever you put in Congress, if Congress is behind this wall and hasn't faced it yet, you're not doing the right voting. To vote is to get woke. Every human must meet this space. That's a woke American. And that's how we make America great in the real sense. Does that make sense?
That's just got to ring out now. That says it all right there.
That's the vote.
I wish everyone could hear this. I really do.
Well, I hope so. We're doing our best, Nath, and this has come for many, many hundreds and hundreds of hours of work together, and my whole life for 60 years as a philosopher to bring this hologram out when I lived in all of these great different traditions. For the Greek philosophy, from the Hindu philosophy, Chinese philosophy, African was feminist thought, scientific thought, logic, rationality, all of these different traditions. 2,500 years, you stand back and say, this is what captures the great call of the call to reason, the call to be a human.
Which is the call to love and peace.
This is a place of love because the other is not objectified. I'm not cutting myself off from my lover, from my child, from the work of art, from nature. Here, everything is woven in a non-violent encounter of deep dialogue. This is monologue. You have your view. You see the world from your lens, even multiple lens. This is monologue. This is dialogue.
Wow.
And so the call now is for us to face this hidden matrix. That's the invisible crisis. That's why culture here is a Titanic. It's destined to implode. It cannot succeed. The American empire here it's already crumbled. It's already fragmented, and we're trying to fix it. You can't fix it here. It's fixed here.
Mm-hmm.
1776 we're suggesting is calling us to fix it now, to get woke.
Yay. Wow. Guys, I hope this serves you in deepening your understanding and the exciting time that we're in right now, and the incredible responsibility for each of us as Americans and as human beings. This is just the beginning. We're gonna keep taking this deeper and deeper, so we hope that you continue to join us. Dad, I gotta say, hats off. Thank you. And
thank you, Nathan, for holding the space you do as a colleague. You're a totally equal colleague, and I love the way you operate and help tune into the people. Yes, you've got a gift about that. I love it.
Well, thanks, Dan. All right, guys. We'll see you next time on Human Up TV.
Thank you.